angle, it's just really hard for her to do two of our principles that are super important, is defending the goal frame and the goal area. And just once the ball gets slipped across, she just doesn't really have a chance. So if she just adjusted her positioning and maybe had her hips facing the ball a little bit more and was a little bit more, I guess, centrally a tad bit, it would be easier for her to maybe, one, impact the ball that's played across, or two, be preventative when the shot was coming off of like a spread. That's what my choice would have been. I would have tried to spread into the 6-yard box as the ball got played across to try to be preventative on the shot coming on the goal frame.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think it's just worth noting, and you said this, right? Like, it's one of the first things I wrote down when you started talking was, this is difficult. The half space just creates so much chaos and so much need to be decisive for defenders and for the goalkeeper. So that's why teams want to get in there. There's so many things you could do from the half space, whether it be take it to the end line and cut it back, whether it be drive in for a 1v1, whether it be create a combination play, whether it be cut it back into your inside foot and have a shot, whether it be kind of like clipped or smaller cross in, depending on where you are inside the half space. There's just so much variation of what could occur. And I think that's why sometimes positioning does get difficult. She has the right idea, drop back, defend that the goal, right? Wait to maybe defend the space. But from here, it's almost like, all right, I'm only worried about protecting one thing. Takes us back to your intended out, or your first point of like, you want to try to impact or affect multiple outcomes. And in this case, you really have nothing but protecting that near post.
And it kind of goes back to, I guess, another point. It wasn't like a key point, but as the ball gets played through, because this was the original ball was a pretty like longer pass through to like break the back line. And if you scan a little bit earlier, like out of possession, and recognize like where runners are, sometimes it makes your job easier.
Yep.
And as the ball gets played from the deeper area at the start of the clip, you could kind of tell pretty early that LA's only going to be able to get one attacker in the box, and she's making a central run. So my first idea is like, all right, if my positioning's good and I can't impact it, I kind of have an idea already in my head where the shot's going to come from. Maybe not exact, but I know she's not the back post. I know she's not making a near post run. I know it's going to come somewhere in the central area of the goal.
I know she has a defender putting on pressure here.
Yeah, 100%. And it, depending on the line of this pass, which was pretty threatening, I mean, it's right outside the 6-yard box, it kind of helps me understand where I could take my line to the ball to be preventative and impact it, whether if it's a spread or a smother, whatever you would like to choose there.
Right. And it gives you the ability to do that if you adjust your positioning, because right now, the way she sets herself, it would be really hard to get into her spread or smother and be preventative there. However, if her hips were angled, that's a different story. And we're talking about being able to kind of like grab that ground and push into that preventative measure as well.
100%.
All right, Kieran. Looks like we're switching over to the men's game on this one.
Yeah, I had to get a Man City clip in here, but
makes sense.
It's actually not Man City's goalkeeper. It's Allison. So it kind of is the opposite of what we were kind of just talking about 2 clips ago. Is it's a great ball from De Bruyne. He plays it into the half space, but Allison recognizes pretty early that when he leaves the most dangerous area of the goal, he can prevent this ball. So it was a great decision, and there wasn't much risk here because he had a recovering defender. This was really the only dangerous player in the box as of right now. He has another center back covering the other run. And since he was so decisive and he took off early in his spread, it was pretty easy for him to prevent. And then the cross comes in. I'm not sure what happens after this. I clipped it, but
I think it's another good fill into one of your points of like, all right, can I save this on the near post? And I did, and I used my preventative measures to do it. And then it comes back out here, and he's in a position where he's being patient. He's got defenders back, and he's ready to impact what he maybe potentially can. He gets back on that near post, gets himself squared up, and then comes in. So
even there, if you go back, it's a little bit tricky if the people that are watching, this is something that I've tried to really think about, like when I'm coaching, is especially since he has 2 defenders there, this might be a case where my hips are a little bit turned and I'm not as squared off. It's definitely up for debate, but I just feel like he has really good coverage from his defenders on a ball that's played on the floor across, especially really close to the 6-yard box. But what I would really be worried about if I scanned and knew there was a player behind me, or even Jack Grealish with his arm up, I would be really worried about this ball that's lifted in the air.
Yeah.
So maybe my first thought would be, I don't know if this is going to come on the floor or it's going to come in the air. But when you're in the run of play like this after he already made a save, it's really difficult to
100%.
to think that way and make these quick adjustments.
Yeah, one thing that I've been talking a lot about when it comes to half space and like as it transitions into end line service, goalkeepers have a lot of questions of like, when do I take my positioning from like, maybe being on the angle here or being a little bit more set into my goal to being butt level with this post and squared up. And for me, the easiest way to say it, and I don't think it's like super concrete and like black and white. There's not many things in goalkeeping that are, but as you get closer down this line, that's when I'm starting to come closer to my post. If you could pass it in or if someone could tap it in there, I want to be protecting that area. So for me, if I was to draw an arrow from here with the tip here, I would say as it draws down that line, that's when I'm getting closer. Obviously, maybe like if there's no pressure here, that's when I decide, okay, how close are you getting? Can I be preventive? Kind of like Allison did in the first clips.
Yeah, and it's tough. Like I feel like when I look at this clip, especially the second part, which wasn't really my main goal of like showing it, but I would try to recognize like who is the most dangerous attacker right now.
Right.
And who would be the biggest threat. And like, since there's 5 Liverpool players in the front half of this 18-yard box, and there's no one really like, if there was a City player like in the middle of these 4 defenders, then I'd be really worried about it. But if De Bruyne cuts it back to Mahrez, who's at the top of the box, he has some coverage from Fabinho there who can maybe step and block the shot. But it's just, would be really concerned about the 2 runners at the back post, just because the right side center back, I guess, doesn't really know he's there. The outside back's not sure if he should cover either which run. It gets difficult. It's definitely like up for debate, and I guess it also maybe relates back to what your goalkeeper's strengths are and what they feel comfortable with.
Absolutely. It also goes back to like why it's so important for goalkeepers to also understand the roles and responsibilities of their teammates, right? Like this is a situation that we faced a lot this fall in particular, where there'd be this back post runner and our weak side center back and weak side outside back were always like, do I call the midfielder back? But we shouldn't need to call our midfielder back. And this is why it's important to know your tactical and like formation approach as well, because you need to know who's picking these up. Because look at him right here. He's confused. Who should I go to? Who's more dangerous, right? And I mean, you don't want either of these players open. We both know that. So that just kind of goes in and could be a sidebar point of like, it's helpful to know the roles and responsibilities of your teammates so you can be directing information in these scenarios as well. All right, I think we're on our final clip, Kieran.
Yeah, last one. Oh, it's Mandy again.
Yeah, it is.
See, this is a great. I thought this was like one of the best clips I've seen of her that I've ended up finding or found on my computer and my phone. Is same idea. Like, it's a really dangerous pass. It was actually a great pass from the player on Spirit, but it's kind of just inside the half space. So, like, I guess there's a debate on the line of the wide area in the half space, but she recognizes really early that this player is super dangerous and it's really tough. Going to be really tough for me to react. You're going to assume that the attacker on the Spirit's going to shoot it on one touch. So she just comes out and makes herself super big and spreads early and ended up making a really, really good save. But this one I liked because it wasn't as like deep towards the end line. It was kind of like an earlier ball. And I mean, Mandy's in really good position here. She's got pressure on the ball. The forward on Spirit doesn't really look like she's going to shoot the ball. So she's just trying to look and pick up runners. And you can see, again, she's pointing. She does a really good job of this in a lot of the matches and clips I've seen of her, is recognizing where the danger is before the ball is played in. And right when she sees it slipped, she makes a really quick decision because she knows that they're kind of like in a 2v1 essentially. Like Utah's only got one player there that can maybe block the pass from being played through besides pressure on the ball. And immediately as it gets played through, she's super preventative. And it just goes back to another point of like prevent when I can and react when I must.
I also love it too, because from here, her positioning is so great. And for me, positioning is one of the most important parts of half space, right? Like
it's one of the hardest, to be fair. Like it sounds super easy, but it's really difficult.
Because if she chooses, I think she hits that with her. Yeah, she hits that with her left foot. like a little like dink pass. I don't know what you call a stab.
Like outside the foot or something. But
if she chooses to cross this, Mandy's in such like that is ultimately what's so difficult besides the chaos. And the reason there is chaos from the half space is because could be a cutback, could be a cross, could be a slip ball for 1v1, could be a shot. So depending on where they are, where their runners are, and where the defensive pressure is, like we have to be mindful of our positioning. And just going back to one of your, I think it was point number 1, you have to be ready to impact multiple outcomes without giving up too much of one.
And I think like if you go back to when before the player on Spirit like is gonna shoot it or like pass it, she kind of knows. I'm assuming she maybe someone watching is like, well, there's a lot of the goal that's open, but if the player on Spirit ends up pushing it on her right foot and then like the touch kind of looks threatening, like she would have adjusted her positioning accordingly.
Right.
But since there's pressure on the ball, she was taking a chance that her defender would be able to help her out or maybe push her wider before she could shoot it. If there was no pressure on the ball, maybe she'd be a little bit more inclined to defend the goal because the player's wide open and continue to dribble towards it. But since her defender does a good job of stepping out there and trying to just show her towards the outside, it was a little bit easier for her to adjust her positioning for more of the ball or cross that's played in rather than defending the goal.
Brilliant. Welcome to the Keeper Institute podcast. My name is Tori Corsaro. I'm a strength and conditioning and goalkeeper coach here at the Keeper Institute and your host for today's show. The Keeper Institute is a unique goalkeeper training facility in New Jersey aimed at developing better goalkeepers and better people. On this podcast, we will be discussing all things goalkeeping, character development, and more. Welcome back to another episode of the Keeper Institute podcast.
We're back, baby.
Oh, I knew I got loud because I could see the little like color on my mic go all the way to red.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a loud one. Turn your volume down. I guess I should have warned you with that first, but we're back. We're better than ever. I do have a little bit of phlegm in my throat. I'll try to mute myself if I need to clear it.
Thank you for saying phlegm on the podcast.
You're welcome. But we're back, baby, and we're ready to record a topic that obviously we're excited about. We talk about it all the time. We also talk about how we're excited all the time. We're talking space defense.
The
I'm so glad you matched me.
I know, the chemistry is just unbelievable.
It's like we just spent like a whole week together nonstop, 24/7 or something.
I know. I kind of wanted to start the podcast off with that. Just if you guys are from San Diego, we have a huge following in San Diego. Like on our Instagram, like people just love and soak up what we do in San Diego. So we went and visited, and it was an incredible visit. We did a couple clinics. We did a couple 2-day training sessions, which were so fun. And thank you to the club that hosted us in La Jolla, because those fields were amazing. And the
chef's kiss.
Yes, the players were amazing. And we're super thankful for everybody that we got to work with. And it also afforded all of us, me, you, and Maria, an opportunity to hang out and see Kaylin a little bit more, which was fun. And it was a great vibe.
I had a blast. Don't forget about Dodo. Dodo was there too. She had the
Dodo was there
job
too.
of watching the boys.
That's right. The best helper.
Yep.
Okay, so let's start off with a clip that we want to show everyone. So if you're watching on the Union app, you can see it. If not, get on the Union app so you can see it. But we want to talk about space defense. So we are going to share a little clip that was from the NWSL a couple weeks ago. It was Anna Morehouse and from Orlando. And this is, I think, a part of the game that people struggle with because there's so many variabilities and so many different ways to solve these problems. But you can see the goalkeeper that's like somewhat off of her line right now because the ball is near midfield. The attacker doesn't really have ability to shoot, and there's some pressure on the ball, so the goalkeeper can stay high on her front foot. And then as soon as that ball gets played, our first thought is, can I impact the ball or not? And Biondolo plays the ball in behind for Maddie Deline, and Anna Morehouse decides that she can't win it. So she drops to protect the goal. But she doesn't drop too early. She reads it first and then decides to drop to protect the goal. And then she gets set because Maddie Deline could hit the ball on one touch. Deline decides not to take the shot on one touch, takes a touch, and then that affords the opportunity for Morehouse to come out and use a preventative final action to put pressure and transfer pressure onto the attacker. So this is the situation that we're talking about today. Just to give you guys a little visual of what it is that we want to chat about. And I think in your experience, Tori, you work at the college level. Is this something that you see goalkeepers struggle with at the college level? And if so, why?
I think that this is one of the most seen, one of the most seen things at the college level. I think the game can be either quite transitional, or you're going to play a good amount of opponents who like to play a more direct brand of football. And that's fine if that's their style. But as goalkeepers, we need to be prepared to handle it. I think goalkeepers struggle with it because of a few things. One, initial starting position can be difficult and can set them up either for success or kind of an in-between or indecisive action. And I think sometimes an inability to know how to be aggressive or what it looks like to be aggressive and being preventative. And it's either get really close and then don't choose a final action, or it's wait too long to take space and get stuck kind of in between two minds.
Yeah. I also think that this is a really difficult element and aspect of the game to be able to manage, because two things. One is it's really hard to replicate these situations in training that reflect the game, right? You can have your coach just hit long balls in and you can come out and clear it or whatever, but it becomes really difficult when you play against players that have an X factor in their athleticism, that no matter how much the goalkeeper coach works on it, they are not going to be able to match the pace of Shwinga, Lynn Biondolo, Maddie Deline. So it becomes really difficult in training to work on. I think the other reason it becomes difficult is because players don't really have a concept of, well, how do I make decisions in this situation? And what are my skill sets? So hopefully we can bring some clarity today on what it is that you should be looking for, what information is pertinent to you, and what type of goalkeeper are you, so that you can learn how to maximize your effectiveness in these situations, because it's not one size fits all. It's not, you have to do this and you have to do this. It's not. It is open for interpretation based on what you see and based on your skill sets. So let's talk about what you mentioned first. And I think that's probably the foundation of this decision, and that's starting position. How do I know where to position myself and what factors kind of influence that?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on who's in control of the ball and where are we on the field. I think those are two really good starting points. At TKI, obviously, we love principles. I think it's just the way our brains work. I also think it's the way that people can understand and learn a little bit easier and create dialogue around things. So if my team's out of possession and the opponent's in a space where they could have a direct shot on goal, I might not be as high. If my team's out of possession and the team is not in a space where they could have a direct shot on goal, I might be a little bit higher. That way I can limit their chances in behind by coming off my line or being in a position where it sets me up to be a bit more preventative. And then obviously if we're in possession, my focus is probably staying connected. That way I can be an option. I could be an outlet for my team. Or again, if we do get depossessed, I can come out and limit that chance.
Yeah, I think anybody who listens to our podcast or knows anything about TKI knows that we are about shot prevention. It's the best way to be able to defend a shot is not to face one. So I think there's a few things that you can think about when you're thinking about your starting position. Is one, you want to stay connected to your backline, right? You don't want to be disconnected, because it affords the opportunity for the opponent to get into central spaces and behind your back line, which is the most threatening space to get into on the field, the most dangerous area of the field. So you want to stay connected. Whether your back line is super high or super deep, you still want to be connected. So that's our first thought is, am I connected? Can I prevent in behind the back line? The second thing I think we need to think about is, what does my body shape look like? And what does the opponent's body shape look like? So in that Morehouse clip that we just saw, we saw Orlando lose possession of the ball, right? And I think what was brilliant about that clip is it happens within their own half, just barely on their half. But Morehouse doesn't just run back to the goal. And so often, this is a common error that we see in goalkeepers, is they're like, oh no, they could shoot. But like Lynn Biondolo couldn't shoot in that moment because there was solid pressure on the ball and her touch was so close to her body. Now, if I asked you, hey, go to midfield and I want you to score a goal from here. What would you have to do? What would you
touch
need?
off my body or run backwards, create space?
Yeah, you need a lot of space to create momentum to get off a 40, 50-yard shot and like make sure it's lobbed over the top of the goalkeeper's head, right? So Morehouse didn't see that Biondolo had that opportunity. So she stayed high because she thought either she's going to dribble or she's going to pass him behind. She can't shoot right now because of the distance away from goal and because of the distance of the ball off her body, which was really smart. So I think it's important for us, one, stay connected. Two, we need to have a body shape that reflects what's happening. And so in that scenario, because we know they can't shoot, I want to be in a sprinter stance. I want my weight on my front foot. You hear front foot defending all the time, right? But for a goalkeeper, it's equally as important that helps me make that decision, and it helps me be as fast as I possibly can, which gives me an opportunity to potentially prevent more than I could be if I was just standing there flat-footed. It also affords you an opportunity that if that ball gets played, it's easier to turn and run back and be able to defend the goal. So in those moments, our team has possession. Great. We're floating around. We're supporting. As soon as that turnover occurs, my stance is changing. I'm getting on my front foot. My weight's going to be forward, and I'm anticipating that ball coming in, right? Think about this. If I stood next to you, Tori, and I said, race to the pole 3, go 1, 2, 3. And we just ran. You wouldn't be prepared to race me. But if I said, all right, Tori, you and I are going to race to that pole on 3. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Your reaction is going to be different because you were anticipating me say go. Whereas before you weren't anticipating me and I get a lead on you. So it's really important for us to have that sprinter stance and in an anticipatory, if that's a word, mindset so that I can make a better decision to be preventative or drop to protect the goal. So number one, all starts with starting position. Then our principles of play kind of come in. So once that ball gets played, now I have to make a decision. Can I impact the ball or not? If I can impact the ball, let's talk about some final actions that we could use and ones that players might not think are available necessarily. Like, what is the most common solution that we see here when someone comes out outside the penalty area? They just clear it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they would just clear it. A lot of people feel super comfortable with that. But the problem then becomes like, well, what happens if the ball is not clearable? Like the defender or the opponent is close to me. The ball is bouncing. So what else can I do? And there's a plethora of final actions that we can use in shot prevention outside the box. We can clear it 100%. We can one touch pass it. We can take a touch pass pressure if pressure is really close to us. We can chest it. We can volley it. We can head it. We can emergency slide tackle if we need to. There's a plethora of different final actions that we can choose to solve these problems. The issue then becomes, let's create an environment where players can try these things. And let's create an environment so that players can feel like they can have more robust solutions to whatever is the unfolding and emerging situation, right? Because what are some, let's brainstorm really quick. What are some different things in the situation that could happen that might impact my decision?
The person's faster than I thought they were going to be.
Yeah, you're going up against someone who has a physical advantage, right? Something that comes to my mind is like, well, is the ball on the ground or is the ball in the air? You have to account for that, right? Because if the same ball is played, but one is bouncing and one's on the ground, your decision's going to be different. What else? What other things? Like, what other information do I need to see? Probably like if my defender has position, right?
Right.
Is my defender shoulder to shoulder? Is my defender never going to be able to recover? Is my defender in front of the attacker, which is now delaying the attacker, now giving me an opportunity to come out and make that final action? Is my defender in front of the attacker and then my defender can pass it back to me and now I've got more time? Is the ball going from in to out or is it going from out to in? Is it going into a more dangerous area of the field or is it going to a less dangerous area of the field? Do I have more recovering defenders that could potentially impact the ball? Like, if you play with Sarah Gordon, I mean, I'm probably not coming off my line, going to let her deal with it because she's the fastest human on earth that plays soccer. But all these different situations, first of all, make it very difficult for us to make decisions because we're having to, it's like we're doing some kind of crazy mathematical problem in our head and you have to make a decision within half a second. Like what's 70 times 422? And you have to be able to do that math really quick and make a decision. And it becomes very difficult. But I think if we have these principles of play and we have experience and we know what we're looking for, what information is pertinent to me, that we can put ourselves in a situation that we can make consistent and effective good choices. And I also want to say with one caveat, if you are a younger goalkeeper and you are listening to this, if you are a coach who works with younger goalkeepers and you are listening to this, if you want your goalkeeper to play high and be more preventative, or if you are a goalkeeper that wants to be that way, you are going to make mistakes, especially in the embryonic stages of you learning how to do this, right? You're in like the baby stages of learning how to make these decisions and what information is important and what's not. You're going to make a ton of mistakes, and that's totally fine. Don't stray away from being preventative just because you've conceded a few bad goals in these moments, right? And don't tell your goalkeeper, just get back in the goal. Like that's not the solution either, because every situation is different and we want to empower people to make their own decisions and their own choices, especially at a young age, because when they get older, we want them to be able to solve any problem, not just be reactive and stay on their line, right? I just spoke a lot, Tor. I'm sorry.
It's okay. You're dropping bombs, man. And my voice isn't great today, so you gotta carry the heavy lifting of the speaking.
All right.
I think it's also funny too, because how many coaches say like, hey, you got to play that high line. We want you to stay connected. But like, does a goalkeeper know why they're staying connected? Do they know what the purpose of them playing that high line is? Or is it show there, only use your feet there? Or is it, you want me to be preventative there too? Like, it's not just so that you can play backwards to me and I can be that passing station. It's in case the ball comes over the top, I can be preventative from here as well. So I think having a good general knowledge of what the purpose of playing high or staying connected with your team is can go a really long way with especially our youth goalkeepers who are still learning the game as a whole.
Right. I also think that one of the underestimated advantages to being a bit higher off your line and connected is that simply by having a more aggressive position, you can influence what the opponent does. So you can be in a position that the opponent sees you and they maybe think twice about playing that ball in behind the back line because you're high, you're being preventative. And so maybe they don't play it in behind the back line at all, or maybe they play it wider into the channel. Maybe they play it into the flank, which is not as dangerous, and which fine by me. Go ahead, go for it. So that's another added advantage to being a bit more aggressive with your starting position and staying connected to the back line. Okay, so our first one is if you can take up a position to be preventative, and then once that ball gets played, make a decision. Can I be preventative? If you can, now you have a slew of final actions that you can use. If not, then the principle is to reposition to either defend the goal or support the attack. So once that ball gets played, I can't win it. Now I'm going to get in a position that if the attacker gets clear on through, I am in a position that I can protect the goal if they decide to go on one touch. Or if not, I can still close space. But if my defender can get position, I want to drop into a position where I can solve the pressure that most likely will transfer onto me. So can I get in a position to receive a pass and then retain possession, or solve the problem based on whatever is happening in the game state, whatever is happening, in terms of the strategy, whatever is available to you. You want to be in a position where you can help solve that so that the defender doesn't, try to clear it out of bounds and then they get dispossessed or they get stripped and now it's a worse situation. So hopefully those ideas and those principles will help you make decisions. Now, Tor, let's talk a little bit more about how each person can manage these situations different.
Meaning based on their preferences, abilities, and whatnot?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that if you're a more preventative goalkeeper, then you might have a higher line naturally, or if that's what your team kind of calls for in their style of play. But you might find yourself quicker to come out and try to negate attacks from the beginning. Like even if they're not inside the 18 and you decide, okay, if I can impact the ball, I'm going. And sometimes that means having to do those final actions you spoke about in the beginning, like chest it, head it, emergency side tackle, spread without your arms, all those kinds of things. If you find yourself being a bit more reactionary, not as confident or comfortable being preventative, the situations that could kind of tip to either side of the scale, you might choose to stay and then go when you're certain you can impact it, or ask your defenders to deal with it. I think those two things of like, am I more preventative and do I like that, or do I feel more confident and comfortable in my reactionary skills, those really change not only your starting position, where you put your weight in your front foot, but also your choice of like how aggressive you can be coming out.
Yeah. I also think that what also goes into these decisions is not just you and not just your team strategy, but your defender's strengths as well. And so accounting for, okay, is my center back an elite 1v1 defender? And is she or he great at recovery runs? Do I trust them to get back and apply pressure? That's all going to factor into your decisions. And you really want to make sure that in these situations you communicate what your plan is, because everybody's decisions are based off of what you are doing or not doing, or not doing, right? So when I make a decision, that causes like a cascade of different decisions for everyone else around the ball. So if I'm coming out for the ball, maybe my defender is going to step in front of the attacker and slow the attacker down so it affords me more time. Or maybe there's no chance that the defender can get in front, so the defender comes behind me just in case I get dribbled around or something happens as like insurance, right? But you also could, like, the ball could be played in behind the back line and the ball's bouncing, right? And your defender could have position. There are so many different ways that this can be solved, right? If the ball's bouncing, the defender could head it back to you. The defender could try to trap it and play it back to you. The defender could just try to get in front of the attacker and hold them off and allow the ball to bounce into the 18-yard box. The goalkeeper could come out aggressive outside the 18-yard box. There's so many different ways. And unless we communicate what we need and what we want, it's going to be really difficult to manage that in a consistent, effective way, because everyone's like, well, who's doing what? And they're not on the same page, right? Because based on what your choice is going to determine your vertical positioning, right? Because if you want the ball headed back to you, you're going to be at the top of the box. If you want the ball played to your feet, you're probably going to drop back a little bit more. So it really is important that we communicate what we need and what we want, because everyone else is making their choices based off of what we're doing. We are the leaders. We are the directors. We are the ones who have to be decisive. Even if you make a bad decision, if we're decisive, then it affords everyone to, the opportunity to be on the same page and kind of be able to eliminate the threat if possible. But yeah, I think this is a really tricky topic, and I think goalkeepers really struggle with this because there's not a lot of clarity in how to manage these situations. There's not a lot of clarity in the objectives. There's not a lot of clarity in the way that we can solve it in terms of the final actions that we have available to us. So hopefully this podcast brought you guys a little bit of clarity, and also just you feel empowered of like, this is hard and I can work on it and I can be capable. Like, no matter what type of goalkeeper you are, you can solve these problems.
Yeah, and it's just like anything else. The more you practice it and the more you see it in a game realistic live setting, and then you challenge yourself to do it in actual practice and actual games, the more comfortable you're going to feel with making decisions. Like, competence breeds confidence, right, Jill? I think we've said that in different podcasts before. And I think the more competence you have does come from training it and allowing yourself to make the mistakes doing it as well.
Yeah. Okay. Question of the day. We're only going to do one. My question for you, and I'll answer this too, is we have our select camps coming up in about 40 days is our first select camp in June. Woo! And then we have 2 more in July, 7 to 9 and 14 to 16. So if you guys haven't registered for that, please do that. But my question goes dovetailing off of that. What is your favorite thing about select camp?
Oh, hands down, easy. The energy.
Yeah.
We bring the energy. The goalkeepers bring the energy. Honestly, sometimes the parents and legal guardians are bringing the energy. It is a blast, and I lose my voice every single select camp, every single year, but it's because of the good times.
Yeah, I'm with you. I went to a camp when I was a kid, and it changed my life. And I know that's probably it sounds dramatic, but I went to an all goalkeeper camp, and it gave me a community I didn't know existed. And it also showed me of like, wow, I have a lot of work to do. I'm not as good as I thought I was. And it encouraged me. Like when I went home, it was that camp. I never worked by myself before. Like when I was at home, I never did fitness. I never did striking on my own. I never trained on my own. And when I went to that camp, I realized like, wow, if I really want to do this, I need to be doing a little bit more on my own. And it wasn't like a have to thing. It was like, I want to be better. Like I really love this and I want to make this my craft. And I just started doing some more training on my own because I was like, wow, there's a huge gap between who I am now and like who I think I can be and who I want to be. And that one experience changed my life. And so I think that's why we do what we do at our select camps, is because we want to afford opportunities to be part of an incredible community and help goalkeepers feel really supported and help them in their journeys, because it can be life-changing. It can be life-altering. It could be career-altering. And we want to be able to provide that opportunity for people.
Snaps to that. If you haven't signed up yet, then I think that should be all the motivation you need. But we hope to see you there. We love Select Camp. I think the people love Select Camp. So why wait? Sign up now.
Yes. And one thing that's so great about our select camps is that we partner with West Coast Goalkeeping, and they are our official glove and goalkeeper equipment supplier. They make gloves for everybody. They're premium material. Over 100 pros in the world use them. They're trusted at every stage. You know, Kaylin Sheridan uses them. Matt Turner uses them. And everybody that comes to our camp gets a free pair. So check out westcoastgoalkeeping.com. Check out thekeeperinstitute.com and come train with us so that you can leave a better goalkeeper in person than when you came.
Gosh, nothing better than that. West Coast gloves and TKI.
Right? It's like peanut butter jelly.
Exactly. Well, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. As always, we appreciate the time you took to listen. If you haven't signed up for Select Camp, sign up now. If you haven't bought West Coast gloves, stop waiting. It's worth it. Stop waiting. But for now, we'll catch you later.
We'll catch you later.